Welcome to our micro-learning segment on the LOIS feedback model. This model is useful when you believe one of your colleagues would benefit from feedback and you want to provide it in a way that's most likely to be understood, accepted, and acted upon. This model is useful regardless of who you're providing the feedback to. Whether it's one of your direct reports, associates, your boss, a friend, or even your spouse. The first step is to learn, to understand the other person's side of the equation and perspective on the situation. As human beings, we can only focus on a small fraction of the information present in our environment at any moment in time. We focus on what's important to us and filter it through our unique perspective and interpretation. The idea that there's one truth in any situation is a myth. Starting any feedback conversation in a truly open, curious, and questioning state will not only help you better understand their point of view, but also put the other person in a more open and accepting space to hear the feedback you're about to provide. For example, there are certain ways to ask about the other's perspective that are more and less likely to start and maintain an open and receptive conversation. John, why did you completely dismiss Jerry's idea in the project meeting yesterday?
What? I don't know what you're talking about, Nicole, and I'm certain I didn't dismiss Jerry.
So how did you feel when I asked you that way?
I felt attacked, like you were criticizing me.
Sure, understandably, right? That's a why question. It creates defensiveness. All right, let's try this one. So John, do you think maybe you should have invited more input, especially from Jerry in that project meeting yesterday?
I don't think so. Jerry would have just gone on and on and on and gotten us all off track.
So how did you respond to that question?
I felt like you were telling me what to do.
Right. So curious, open, what questions really bring out others' views. So let's try this again. So John, you seemed kind of irritated in the project meeting a little bit yesterday. What was going on for you?
Well, you know that Jerry has a tendency to ramble, and I was afraid that he was going to take us off track.
I get it. How did that feel?
Much better. It was a natural question. I didn't feel like you were criticizing me or telling me what to do.
Okay, so that was the L in the LOIS model. The next step is to share your observations. So let's try this one. John, you really screwed up in the project meeting again yesterday. What was going on?
What? You were constantly criticizing me. I didn't screw up anything in yesterday's project meeting.
So how did you feel about that observation?
Criticized?
Of course,
yeah.
Right? And why did you feel that way?
Because you were talking to me. You were telling me that I screwed up.
Yeah, I used you language,
Yes.
Right? So that really puts people on the defensive when you use you language. Using I language really opens people up. So rather, you want to share I noticed, I observed. This allows both people to put themselves back in the situation in a neutral and objective space. So something like, let's try this again. So John, I noticed in the project meeting that you seemed a little bit irritated. Tell me a little bit about what was going on.
I feel like I constantly have to work too hard to get my point across to Jerry, and it's frustrating.
I get it. Yeah. So I observed that there was a time in the meeting that Jerry did bring up an idea, and then the agenda kind of moved on pretty quickly without allowing the space for people to discuss that idea. Did you notice that?
I did. Everybody went quiet after that.
So the next step is to share the impact you believe their behaviors had on you, others, and the organization. We will again share a not so great example of this stage first, before we share the more constructive example later on. So John, when you screwed up the meeting yesterday, I really think you made Jerry mad.
Screwed up the meeting. Jerry is clueless, Nicole. And if we let Jerry talk, he's going to take us down every rabbit hole there is.
So how'd you feel about that exchange?
Again, screwed up is critical.
Just
I feel like
right?
a screw up.
Yeah. And I used you language again, right? And when you use you language, it puts the other person on the defensive. So the next step, now that we've gone through learning the other person's perspective, sharing your observations, sharing the impact, now it's time to share your suggestions. So let's give this a try. So John, I really think you need to go back to Jerry and apologize for how badly you screwed up.
Why would I apologize to Jerry? If if anybody should be mad, it should be Jerry, and he should be mad at himself.
So how did that feel for you?
Like you were telling me what to do.
I was telling you what to do, right? And you weren't bought in because we hadn't set the stage for a trusting partnership and because I used you language again. All right. So that's the LOIS model. We'll have a better example in a minute, but just to review, we learned what the other person believed the situation to be. We shared our observations. We shared the impact of those observations and suggestions. So if you haven't set the stage for an open and trusting discussion, any suggestion you have will be rejected, either openly or more passively. This again uses you language and does not demonstrate a supportive partnership. So now that we've talked about each step in the LOIS model, let's use what we've learned and see if we can get through to John's obstinate and defensive nature a little bit better here with a more appropriate approach. So John, I remember the project meeting that we had yesterday. Tell me a little bit about what you thought about it.
Well, it was going along fine, and then Jerry interjected something that was completely irrelevant, and I think I kind of shut him down. And then I noticed most of the rest of the team shut down.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Yeah, I did notice that, Jerry brought up an idea, and then the agenda kind of moved on pretty quickly without Jerry having an opportunity really to share his idea or for people to really discuss that idea. Did you notice that? Or?
Yeah, I did. I'm not really sure how Jerry was reacting, but I do think I may have been a bit harsh.
Okay. What do you think the impact might have been on Jerry, on the team?
Clearly Jerry withdrew from the conversation, and I suspect he's a bit hurt and felt like he was dismissed.
Okay.
And in terms of the rest of the team, they went quiet as well, and I think they now may be hesitant to provide input.
It could be, yeah. So what do you think you could do next?
Well, I didn't intend to treat Jerry that way or to hurt his feelings or to dismiss him, so I think that I need to sit down with him and apologize. And then at the next team meeting, I think it's appropriate for me to apologize to the team because I was behaving like a jerk and wasn't open to everyone's input.
That's a little harsh, but yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I would really suggest that, take a little time with Jerry and, maybe set up some time right now and try to learn a little bit more about his idea and provide that opportunity in the next team meeting to talk about it. I think that'd have a positive impact for, the team's engagement and creativity and their willingness to bring up ideas in the future. What do you think?
I think so too. I appreciate the feedback, and I'm going to do those things.
All right, I'm sure it'll go great.
Thanks.
So now it's time to practice. You have a learning journal either printed or on your computer. Consider a recent situation with one of your colleagues, associates, or manager where you had an opportunity to provide feedback, but you didn't. Use the LOIS model to write out what you would say or will say when sharing the feedback with that individual. Write out your questions about what you want to learn. Write your objective observations using I language. Describe the impact that you see those observations have on you, the team, that individual, and that team, and the organization's goals. And then write out your suggestions for what they may want to try to do differently. After preparing your message, it's time to deliver. Figure out your plan for having this conversation and try it out. Yes, right now. Pause the video, craft your message, and go and deliver it. Come back to this video after you've had the conversation. So how did it go? Open your learning journal and answer the debrief questions. How did you feel about that conversation? What was different about this conversation than others you may have had with this individual? What were you most pleased about? What challenges did you have? What did you learn? And what will you do now? So now it's important to make these conversations a habit. Set aside time every week to consider who would you like to engage in a feedback conversation. Craft your LOIS message and have that conversation. After doing this a few dozen times, it will become a habit that becomes more automatic and more natural. Good luck.